ahead and call our meeting to order. This is a workshop, and at the time we're going to listen to the citizens and take some notes on LDC. We're also, one of the things I hope that we can do is we can just talk about things, suggestions, solutions, and not make any decisions. We want to take some notes. We're going to take some notes. We're going to do a little bit different this time. I'm going to have the city administrator be the facilitator of this, so that everything is documented. It all goes to him, and the council we give our input also. But we want to kind of have a facilitator take care of this rather than the mayor trying to run it.
I'm nicer than the mayor.
Yeah, way nicer. Go ahead.
So yeah, this is the first public workshop. Just to fill you in on the way the process works and what the council is thinking. We know there are some issues with the land development codes, LDCs or land development regs, LDRs, whatever you want to call it. Things that have come up over the past probably years. So our hope through this process is to uncover what those issues are, or uncover what those changes need to be, and then after our next workshop, all of the suggestions will be presented to the council, and the council will then decide, are there things that they want to are there things they want to address immediately, or are there things, is there a lot to do, we want to set up a committee and then have the committee decide what approach to take. We do have some funds allocated for a Lara's firm, the Planning Collective, to do some of the work for us. We can also leverage our in-house resources with EPCI as well. So as the mayor mentioned, tonight is not about taking action or determining what action to take. Tonight is simply about identifying some of the issues that we've had, and then those actions will be figured out at a later point. As it sits right now, I have a total of 98 different items that have been presented through the council, through planning and zoning, through residents, as well as staff. I was originally going to just use up our tablet there to start marking things down, but at 98 deep we don't have enough paper, so I'm just going to be taking notes in Excel instead. And then after we get through the next meeting and into the following council meeting, that's, like I said, we'll make a decision on how to move forward, and by that time hopefully we'll have some ideas on what to do. So my ask of you as facilitator, come on up, let us know, like I said, what changes you would like to make or what issues you have encountered and think the council should address. I only have one bottle of caffeine, so keep your comments limited. I can't go much late tonight, but then we'll get through all of this. There won't be any back and forth between the council and all of you. They're here to listen and understand what you're asking for, so when it comes time to make those decisions, they'll have that to fall back on. Is there anything else from the council's perspective that we want to touch on?
Anybody?
So, I mean, this is good idea.
Anything from LR or EPCI, Greg, before we get going?
No.
Okay.
Yes, we'll go by the same format. You're still going to have to come up, and only because we want to make sure that this is being taped. We want to make sure you're being heard. So normally I would go ahead and talk from your seat, very open, but I just don't think it'll work for the audience that's listening. So if you would, just come to the podium.
Ask a quick question of Chris first before any of this starts.
Sure.
Do you have a list of this to pass out to people, that you have this 96 that we can just look at and see what you've compiled and what you've gotten for the citizens?
I can put that together for what we have so far. My original intent was not to do that until we get through the second meeting, simply because what I've found so far is there are things that are similar, there are things that are different. I don't want to put out a public document saying this is what we're looking at when we actually haven't gone through that process yet. But if you're requesting, I can certainly put together what we have so far. Sure.
And would you put that on the website for everybody to review?
Yeah, absolutely, I can do that. I will put it on the website. I'll add it to the administrator weekly updates section thing in the first drop-down menu. We'll have it in there with a caveat, and I'll have the caveat tonight as well. This is a working document. This is not the gospel truth yet. Are there any other questions? Otherwise, we'll open it up. Yes, ma'am, did you have something?
I'm waiting to be the first one up.
Oh, okay,
Are we ready?
absolutely.
Open it up, open it up, open it up.
And I'm not ignoring you, I'm just taking notes as you speak.
I understand. Lisa Logan, Maryland Boulevard. Just a couple of things right off the bat. If there's a list of 98 potential items, even if there's only half of that, 40 or 45 of them, to me that's clear that it should be a in-depth.
I'm so sorry, can I interrupt you?
Yes.
Okay. For tonight's purpose, that is absolutely valid feedback. That's the stuff that should be coming at the next city council meeting when we get through this. Tonight is just information gathering, so if you let me
Okay.
know what points you have or what topics you want to address, then we can get all that together and then they can make that decision. So I'm so sorry for interrupting.
Okay, then I'll bring it up again at the next meeting. The second thing is, as I was gathering the information for the sidewalk and the big pathway, and I put out the information from 2008 about the city sidewalk, I also ran across in the articles in the Star newspaper in 2008 in October, there was a complete review of the LDR, and it was done at the planning and zoning board meetings through the citizens with citizen input. So in 2008, I do know that there was one.
So do you have items for us to add to this list tonight?
Yes, I do. I have 17.
Rock and roll.
Okay.
Just remember, I don't have that much caffeine, so.
Well, I don't talk all that fast, so I'll just try to do this as best I can.
The other thing you can do, if you don't want to chat, you can also email it to me. It's up
Well,
to
I
you.
didn't get it into you by Friday, so
Okay.
that's why I don't have it already handed in.
Okay.
The first thing is, this has been going on for 20 years, and we've brought this up many times. Real estate agents who sell in the town have consistently told people who are looking to buy property that they can come in and buy property. The lot is large enough to split. You can come in, buy this lot in a subdivision that's already platted, split the lot, build on one side, sell it, and make yourself a bundle of money. That destroys the platted subdivisions, and we have to then go in front of the council and planning and zoning to fight to keep the subdivisions that are already platted in place. That's a huge problem. And we have asked many times for the councils to have what we used to call a come to Jesus meeting with the real estate agents. That is not acceptable.
So is your, I'm a one-track mind tonight, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
So is your suggestion,
Have a meeting with the real estate agents and tell them that they can't just arbitrarily tell clients that they could split lots.
how is that related to the LDC?
Can I comment?
Lot splits are in there.
There is some lot split language,
Uh-huh.
but it's in the,
Okay,
we're just collecting.
We gotta make sure that they understand the lots.
okay, gotcha, okay.
Okay, one of the biggest things is the minimum, when developers come in, and I bet you you're gonna have a comment to
No,
this.
I'm not gonna comment.
When developers come in and want to do the density, how many houses can be built, they count the total amount of land. And some of that land can be unbuildable, but they still get to count the total amount of land in how many houses are put on there, so you're cramming more houses on the buildable land than you would normally have allowed. We've asked for years for that to be changed.
Can I,
Yes.
just to make sure, I'm gonna jump in all the time,
That's
and I'm
fine.
sorry. So if I understand correctly, the issue then is density should be calculated based on buildable acreage?
Yes,
Okay,
yes. Another thing that we have argued for years, especially since the hurricane, the height of the houses should be added to the height required of the pilings so that we do not get what we have in many cases down here on the west end, which are wind tunnels. Now, I know that sometimes the piling height is set by DEP, but we have often argued among ourselves here in the town that you should not be able to build 32 houses on top of 10-foot pilings. So that's something that needs to be looked at again, because what you get are these extra tall houses.
And we're not gonna answer a lot of questions here,
Oh.
but I think some of the stuff though you're talking about might already have been addressed in the last couple of years.
Not necessarily,
We'll-
but okay.
We'll
Yeah.
take notes on all of it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I got a good list going.
Another issue that has come up multiple times, especially since the hurricane, if the plans are not followed or there's a mistake made, then the contractor is not required to fix the mistake, including ripping out what is built. It has happened multiple times since the hurricane. And it's supposed to have been fixed, but it kept coming back up, and I still don't think it's fixed. Another thing that's huge is the 40-60% ratios. That's huge. The lack of control over the 40% buildable with 60% open has just gone out the window, and that is one of the major reasons for the flooding. We've talked about the tree issue.
Is that number 6, trees?
What,
That's what I have it as.
That's what I have as number 6.
okay. And swales. Swales are not included in a whole lot of things that are being built, and it has resulted in massive flooding, including my yard. Filling in the canals and the right-of-way ditches. That has brought about a lot of flooding. People simply have filled it in. It's written very clearly, you're not allowed to do that unless you come in front of the council and get permission. I can show you which ones I can point out immediately that are like that. And I'll stop at this next one. The number of bedrooms should determine the number of parking spaces. We've argued so many times that we're at 2 parking spaces per house in residential zoning. That's not enough in so many of the cases. It was brought up a couple of years ago. We should require the number of parking spaces at residential houses by the number of bedrooms +1, and the +1 means you take care of the sleeper sofas that are used as bedrooms. So if you've got a 5-bedroom house, then you need more than 2 parking spaces. So
Is that a suggestion you're making?
it's one of the issues,
Okay.
because we are capped at 2 parking spaces per lot. If you have a 2-bedroom house, that might work. If you have a 5-bedroom house, it does not work. It makes you spill out over your lot and into the streets. So it's an issue. I'll stop there because the list is.
Whoa.
Can I ask you?
You're facilitated, but I don't want her to quit if she's got more on the list.
I asked for one clarification. You said soil management is not included in the requirements, and then filling in canals and right of ways should not be allowed. Are those the same thing, or are you saying the swale is different?
The swales between the residences, that's
Okay.
supposed to be swales.
Okay.
So, does that answer your
Yes,
question?
absolutely.
Okay.
And then if you have the stuff on the list, let's get it all on the table now so that we can come
Okay.
into this.
All right, so I'll do that. Swales, trees,
What was the trees issue?
everything.
I
The
can't
number
write
of
that.
trees that are supposed to be planted that are not planted, the size of the trees that are set out in the LDR that are not enforced. The fact that some people are getting COs without planting the number of trees.
So
So
are you saying,
enforce whatever rules we have based on the trees. That's, okay.
That's a good one.
I have a little, don't mean to interrupt Lisa, but I'm gonna
Go ahead.
piggyback on that when I have a chance, because I've studied the tree issue in much more detail and some specifics in the LDC that I would like to share when the time is appropriate.
All right. Well, that pretty much hits the major ones that I've got. I've covered most of my list. The other things that may be smaller, I'll just go ahead and submit to Chris.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
alright, so just to recap what I have, make sure realtors understand lot splits. Density should be calculated based on buildable acreage. Total allowable height should include pilings. Contractors should be required to fix any violations or variations prior to certificate of occupancy. The 40-60 ratio of impervious needs to be enforced. Tree enforcement needs to happen. Swales between residences are not included in requirements. Filling in canals and rights of way should not be allowed, and numbered bedrooms should determine number of parking
And
spaces.
filling the canal.
Filling in the canals, yeah. Okay, cool.
The number of rooms and bedrooms parking.
Yep, number of bedrooms should determine number of parking spaces. Okay. And you are not gonna say,
That's correct.
because
I'm not-
here's your new verbiage. You are not the last house in Bay County, you are the first house
Going west,
in Bay County,
going
absolutely.
west. 43 First Street, John Harrell's the name. This is just a little wording policing that I have here. And I will leave this copy with you
Yeah,
or with
thank you.
Julie, whoever would like it. I wrote it down. My first one is under fences, 2.04.03. In the wording, it says posts of each fence must be pressure treated for strength and endurance. What it should say is wood post, because if that's the case, then you can't have an aluminum or vinyl or a chain link fence because you can't pressure treat them. So I think the wording wood, this is just to clean up this. It, you know. The second thing, and that was A, 2.0403A. Under C, it says, it goes into about front yard fencing, blah, 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 and except as provided in section 2.05.04 below. Well, in my CDC book, I can't find a 2.05.04.
That has been corrected.
Okay,
That has been corrected in a future,
because I have the 22.
Okay, we're at 24.
Okay, then I'll slip by one day, and if you'll give me a copy, I would appreciate it.
I will take care of it. for
Thank you very much.
That
Okay,
has
good.
been
Let's see, we've already solved that one. Good job. All right, now we go to section 5.03.05 under signs, and it says political signs on private property with permission of the owners. All right, but then you look over to 5.07.04. It says under vacant lots, placement of any signs, including political signs, is prohibited. So I just think you need to clean it up. It's kind of confusing. Because if you're in one section, it says, oh, as long as if it's an empty lot and I got the permissions owner, I can put a political sign up. But then you go 2 numbers over, it says, no, you can't. So it conflicts with each other. So who's right? And whichever way y'all want to do it, you should decide and then clean it up. It's confusing. And then the last thing, I don't have the ordinance, but please consider changing the ordinance that allows residential housing on commercial property. We got all these new developments that's going to have commercial property. But we don't have any commercial land now because we got residential houses on. And we all want grocery stores and shops and different things, but we don't have the commercial property to do it. So please consider that.
Alright, so.
Yes, sir.
Post of each fence should say, wood post of each fence must be pressure treated.
Correct.
Either we allow political signs on all property or disallow because there's conflicting between vacant and non-vacant lots. and then disallow residential development on commercial property.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
you want that?
Yes, please, thank you,
No.
sir.
All right.
Thank you.
You'll get 'em.
Rock Crease, MD. I gave you the whole list so you have it, but talk about
Yep,
some of
it's
the
in
things
here.
here. The elephant in the room, who just mentioned it? And this is what I'm hearing, not only my stuff I found, but things from the citizens. Citizens' number one complaint, no commercial property left. 2.02.02 needs to be updated to remove single-family residential housing and condominiums from general commercial zoning. Right now, you can build a 48-foot house in commercial property. And as you know, we got nothing left. Now Rustic Sands is back up for sale again, and I guarantee you, they're not considering selling that as commercial property. It'll be residential. That's how that's gonna happen. Little things, you know, the townhouse district is missing, needs to be added. 2.02.05, change in use has come up several times as an example, where the post office was, with the bar going in, right next door. Them buildings weren't even there until after the hurricane. And that was a big discussion that came up, and we need to better define what like business is. To me, a bar is not like a like business that's open from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock doing mail or something like that. And Doug took that out of the P&Z and changed it where the city administrator has total authority to decide whatever. I think that needs to go back to P&Z so everybody who lives around someplace can come up and voice their opinion, and then it'll go to you guys for a decision.
Can I ask a clarification on that? So are you saying we need to better define like business, or
Yes.
are you saying all requests should go before P and Z?
They should for a different business coming in. I mean, if you have a grocery store and it's changing to a 7-Eleven or something, that's a like business. But if it's something different that's coming in, like they wanted to do up here and put a bar in, where there's never been a bar, it was a post office in a stained glass place, that ain't nothing near a like business. So stuff like that needs to go to the P&Z so it can be discussed and citizens can come in and talk about it, and then go to the council, and not just be a decision being done. That was changed several years ago.
Can I ask a favor of you?
Yes.
Can you at some point provide me with what would be either like businesses or unlike businesses so that we have some examples when we start talking?
Well, I just used one, a post office and a liquor store. I mean, a post office and a bar, that's not a like business. When you got some place that's open from 8 to 5 and another place that's gonna be open until 2 o'clock in the morning. That's totally different. It's like having a restaurant in somewhere, you know, in a residential neighborhood.
So do I understand correctly then, it would be treating retail equals retail, so a convenience shop versus a grocery store, restaurant is restaurant, bar would be bar, what about opening a liquor store next to a bar? Is that retail or is that restaurant?
Well, if you have
or
a liquor
how-
store, to me, that would be retail because it ain't open until 2 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, gotcha.
Type things like that. And that
Okay.
came up. That was a big discussion at the P&Z a couple years ago. I think, Tim, you were on there at the time. That came up. The other one, 2.04.00, accessory structures, need to be better defined. Example, can you have kitchens, bathrooms, and sleeping quarters in a accessory structure? It doesn't address that. And it's came up numerous times that some of these houses have second houses that people are living in. So I see you shaking your head over here. That needs to come up and be addressed. The other one, and this just came up recently, it's not in there, e-bikes on the beach. Because people have been driving e-bikes on the beach, so I'll talk about that and sidewalks. The other one, lot splits or combining lots, I think that needs to be a little more defined in there, required recording and a time limit when people do things like that. The other one, it's a big one right now, I look at 2 of them from my house and it's actually ridiculous. Time limit on natural disaster repairs and remodeling. That needs to be put in the LDC to put a damn time limit on it. Enough is enough, this is getting ridiculous. Aesthetics for commercial property, how the city should look. You know, you look down and you go to Shell Shack, it kind of gives you that feeling of a seafood town, kind of fishing village. You go to the new brewery, they got their stuff outside, and then you go down 2 blocks and you got this monstrosity painted different colors that's going to sell t-shirts. That, I don't know how that got in there like that, but we need to address that so as the city gets stuff built, it blends into a type town we want. Landscaping requirements again need to be addressed. Tree height is an example. I went through that 7 years ago in the wintertime trying to get 10-foot trees, so we need to look into that, and that's been addressed. The other one, he talked about fences, fences having the good side in. We've got some fences in the neighborhood, there needs to be an exclusion in there. If somebody has a chain link fence and you're putting your fence up against it, you can't put the good side, it has to be backwards, unless you rip their fence down. So there should be an exception to that. The septic tank thing needs to be taken away, and another one I want to address is all the zoning setbacks. What can be in a setback not to be counted? That's come up over and over. Is it air conditioners, porches, stairs, and do we need them all setbacks the same, or look at tweaking them some? And I'm sure the building department will have a say in that, along with the fire department. 3.00.04, your storage building size is limited to 100 square feet. That's a 10 by 10 shed. Nobody has a 10 by 10 shed. Accessory structures are limited to a different size. So I don't know why that's even in there.
So I'm sorry, with that, what are you saying?
Yeah,
It should be more?
3.00.04. Yeah, it says storage building size is limited to 100 square feet. But accessory structure is a storage building. So I mean, 100 square feet is ridiculous. That's a 10 by 10. That should be eliminated out of there. The other one is buffer zone size. Between commercial property and commercial and stuff like that, to readdress the buffer, how wide it should be, high, maybe tweak it a little bit in there. Was brought up here, the mitigation for wetland development. Like it's been said, you know, everybody can come in here and buy a 100-acre lot that has 50 acres of wetland on it, like the paper company's gonna do, and have it all filled in. And then they get mitigation in the middle of the state somewhere that doesn't help us out at all. I don't know, that's probably an attorney question, if we can do something and limit to where if you have wetlands, 20-30% or something needs to stay here so we can have some wetlands and not just do away with it and sell it and put it somewhere else in the state. The other one, council decided, I brought this up at a meeting, a couple of meetings ago, council decided several years ago that a lot is cleared, it must be maintained. That needs to be in there, listed somewhere, that just grass height. Also, what can be kept on an empty lot. Currently, you have boat trailers, work trailers, all kinds of stuff sitting on empty lots that don't even have license plates on them, which violates everything in your rules and regs. And then you have the other thing, you can't have an RV on your lot. Well, I understand there should be the time limit for the RV after you build a house and it starts going vertical. That needs to be added to the LDC, so people who are looking at an LDC and building go, okay, once I start building up, I can have my RV and live in it for 5 months, 6 months, whatever. But I don't understand if you have an empty lot, you can't have an RV on it, but I can have a boat trailer with no license plate, I can have this on it with no license plate, and that doesn't make sense. The food truck section probably needs to have things added in there, like it requires a wash station, porta potties, and trash management, just so it's in there. I talk to people all the time when I go out for sunset and stuff, and people go, garbage cans overflowing here or there in some of the trailers, they don't empty them, the bears are getting in them, just to do something like that. And the latest zoning map needs to be included right at 2.00.0, which are all your zoning. That should be right in there, a nice big new one. But some of the other things to address, you have them. I didn't talk about any of the little things, so.
Okay, yeah, I won't do a recap because you actually gave me a lot more than a copy of all
Yeah,
word
you
for
have
word,
all that,
so,
so.
yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Lorene Lindsay, Florida Avenue. You already got a big list from me. I'm gonna say a couple of things. First of all, one of the biggest issues that I've seen in this, even with the revisions, and Julie sent me some of those revisions, but we need to make a distinction between calendar days and what are called working days in this document, because it becomes really an important issue when we talk about public notification. And we have no definition for what are working days. I'm assuming that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But we need to be sure that when we put these limits on there about deadlines, that we distinguish between calendar and working days, because otherwise, you know, it gets really mixed up. A couple of other things. First of all, I want to say some of the things that have been said already. We've got to do something about cleaning up commercial property and taking residential property out of commercial property. That's really critical to us getting those services that we need. We talked about grocery stores, but you know, restaurants are in there too. So we'd all like that. One thing I'm gonna say about, and I just found this, it's not on the list I gave you.
Well, you just can't talk about it, that's all.
Oh, okay. I've been told that before.
It's all good, what you got?
Okay, so when it comes to impervious surface, the actual definition, it says, if porous paving materials are used, documentation shall be provided demonstrating the permeability of the materials and the percentage of impervious area shall be adjusted accordingly. I don't think we've ever enforced that on planning and zoning, but that's important because, you know, we've talked about this before. There are all kinds of yay and nay about pavers and the use of them and whether are they permeable or not permeable. I don't want to get into that, but we need to address it. One of those things we just haven't done. The other thing that I will say, somebody brought up the e-bikes. You know, we now have a lot more e-bikes, golf carts, and other motorized vehicles that are different. And we need to address those in some manner with this LDC, making sure that we identify where those are appropriate and where they're not appropriate and that type of thing. The other thing, let's see, what was I gonna, just give me a second here. The other one, which I'm sure you'll find if you do some actual research, one of my big concerns is the requirements that we have for concurrency. And I believe that the number of gallons per day per household that's used in our current LDC is higher than it needs to be, okay? Because we have gone through an extensive process nationwide of, you know, developing low volume toilets, washing machines, and all that kind of stuff. So that whole section needs to be revised with more accurate information than what we are currently using. I believe we're currently using 250 gallons per household per day, and that's an overfigure, okay? We need to change that. However, the other thing I think we need to do with regard to concurrency is we need to be sure that that annual concurrency report is done and put out and at least provided to the planning and zoning group as part of the public record to be sure that we have the capacity that we need to make these approvals for all these developments. Because, you know, we have had years, and I've checked back, we've had years where there was no concurrency report. And it is a requirement in state code that we do that on an annual basis and that we look at that and that we not approve more places or, you know, building if we can't demonstrate that we have the capacity to do that, okay? So that whole section needs some real work on it. With regard to what was brought up earlier in terms of the concept of making, if we're going to do wetlands mitigation, we should limit it to our own watershed. And may I point out to you, and I don't have it right here with me, but the comprehensive plan clearly states that the City of Mexico Beach can require more strict regulations concerning these types of issues than are required by state law. So we don't have to go by, oh yeah, you can buy wetlands down in the below Ocala and count that as wetlands mitigation for our community. We're not bound by that because our regulations can be more strict, and it's in the comprehensive plan that is true. So I caution you about that because it's clearly stated that we can do that.
So are you, I'm sorry, if I can interrupt, I'm just trying to take notes. So in the list you gave me, you said the compensatory mitigation line must be located in this watershed to preserve local environmental benefits. Are you adding something new to that, or are you just saying we need to make sure that's enforced?
No, I'm saying, you've misunderstood.
Yeah, that's why I wanted a clarification.
Yeah, it needs to be added to it,
Okay,
but what I was saying to support that is the fact that our comprehensive plan says,
okay, gotcha.
yes, we can do that,
Okay.
okay? So, yeah. There's one more thing, and I'm sorry, I've forgotten what it is, but give me just a second here. Oh, I know what it is. Okay, I'm gonna go back a little bit with you guys. When we first started talking about annexing Farmdale, we, at that time, there was some discussion about an additional line to be put in. I've forgotten how many feet it was. It seems like it was 4,000 feet. Anyway, it came up in a meeting and, you know, there was all this back and forth talk. And one of the things that I think is important for us as a community is when we start doing this kind of expansion that we've been doing with all this building, we need to constantly improve our infrastructure. We need to constantly improve the way that we run our water distribution system, our wastewater collection system. And, you know, it came up in that meeting that when before we decided to annex Farmdale, to put in an extra bit of piping. And that is industry standard, by the way. Water system, distribution systems should be a looped system, meaning you can feed from different sides of the main structure, the main lines coming in and out. And that helps you a great deal, especially if you've got a water main break. That means you don't have to shut down a whole big area. You only need to shut down a tiny bit of it and bring the water in from the other side. So it's things like that that we need to demand for contractors to do when they come in and build in our city. And that's not like some unusual thing to do. It is in fact industry standard to do stuff like that. So we need to defend those kinds of things and make sure that we're constantly improving that system of water distribution, wastewater collection as we build our city, because it becomes more and more important.
So can I, sorry, jump in here?
Go ahead.
If I'm understanding correctly then, to sum that up, you're stating that planned unit developments or PUDs need to include closed system or circular water lines. Is that fair to say?
Looped.
Loop, thank you. Okay.
Because, you know, that protects us as a community so that as we build and as we get bigger, we're constantly improving and moving with the times and moving with what our city's becoming. Because at this point, it seems like we just let developers come in and just let them do whatever the...
Okay, so anyway, on that point, so it looks like the only thing new that we've added is the impervious surface, new
Yes.
to your list.
Yes.
And then
Yes, the
the
other-
PUDs need the loop water lines.
Yes.
Is that, okay.
Yes. And so that, and you have the rest of my stuff.
Lauren,
Yeah.
can I just clarify what you meant by the watershed, with watershed outside of Mexico Beach? Is that what you said included?
No, I'm saying we should, if we're gonna allow mitigation, okay, as a substitute for letting somebody destroy wetlands, then that mitigation area should be in our watershed.
Okay.
Because otherwise, we don't get the environmental services provided by wetlands.
What I'm trying to clarify, Lauren, is so our watershed is outside the city limits. Are you talking about just inside the city limits?
No, I'm okay with it being outside the city limits, as long as it's in our watershed. Because, you know, one of the big things about wetlands is that it cleans up that water and it collects that storm water. And so it's okay if it's outside our city limits, as long as it's in the watershed, it's still contributing those environmental services to us.
I understand. What you're saying is if we allow mitigation, it should be in the watershed that affects Mexico Beach.
Right. Something down in south of Orlando is not gonna help us.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify, since you asked that and studied that, I thought that the wetlands bank had to be ball credits from the bank, and I'm just asking this, that it had to be
You,
in that, I would, let's say shed, but I didn't think you could really go to
oh,
Orlando or somewhere and buy
Yes, you
credits
can.
from here. Now, I have not
Yes.
ventured down that path.
you can,
Okay.
and, you know, I mean, I don't wanna get into
Yeah,
my feelings about wetlands mitigation in general, but you can buy them from anywhere. Okay? So,
And you're saying that we have no rules to protect ourselves because there's a state law.
well, I'm trying to be extremely diplomatic. I believe that we are in some ways hiding behind by saying that, yeah, we're gonna let them do that because they bought it from the state bank. And that's okay with us. Well, I don't see why we should say that, because we're not getting any benefit from that. And why don't we protect our own neighborhoods? That's what I'm saying. And we have, within the comprehensive plan, a statement that says that we can be more strict on those types of issues than what the state allows. So, you know, let's stand up and be proud to go beyond. Thank you.
Kavanaugh, thank you.
Hi, Jack Kerrigan, 103 20th Street. Just a little bit more on Lisa's number 6 of trees. And I know
You're
we're not
number
here.
one.
What's
You're
that?
number one, right?
Yes, my only one. So I think something that we need to consider is, this is actually Article 4, 4.00.00 in the LDC. And it's natural resources protection. But I think because of what's happened here, because of Hurricane Michael, we almost need to look at it differently as natural resources replacement. My business is here, I live here, I grew up here, I climb trees here, but my clients come over from Panama City, and I hear one thing all the time. What happened to all the trees? Where are all the trees? Well, we almost get used to it. We see it every day. They see it with fresh eyes, and they're seeing 3-story homes. In typical neighborhoods, the trees are taller than the homes. We're sort of the other way around. And I've heard that we don't enforce, and I believe that. Gina Johnson, who used to be with EPC, I don't know if she still is, she told me that she's heard from homeowners that they don't plan to, they just want their CO. They don't plan to maintain their trees. They just they're waiting to let them die. They put them in for a CO. So I think there's enforcement, and that's important, but I think we might also want to look at, in our special situation, what do we want the rule to be? And right now it is 1 tree per every linear 50 feet. So if you have a lot of 50 by 100, that would be 4 trees.
It's around that top one, that'd be 6 trees.
6 trees.
You got 2 for the front, 2 for the back on the 100 feet side, you would have 2 on each of those.
Okay, I miscalculated. You're right,
And
6.
then you'd have one.
So are you,
75 by 100, that might be.
to make sure I'm understanding correctly, you're saying with this, we basically need to increase the required number of trees or greenery or what have you?
I think we should consider that. I think we should consider, because of the situation in Mexico Beach, and it's not uncommon now to see a 3-story home with an elevator and an elevated pool. I don't think cost is the issue. That people can afford to put a few more trees in, whether it's, if you double the regulation, it's 6 trees at $500 a tree for a 10-foot oak. You're looking at $3,000. I don't think cost is the issue, but I think as leaders, as stewards of Mexico Beach, if we don't do this, we're going to look down the road and see just a bunch of inorganic structures and no visual shade and all the things that trees would do for us. And I often hear in all of these meetings from citizens, we want Mexico Beach just to be the way it used to be. Well, that's one thing that it used to have, that we have the opportunity to perhaps try to restore if we look at these regulations. And some of the things that maybe we might be able to look at is what is commonplace for similar communities? Is 1 tree per 50 feet common in Gulf County and Bay County and City of Apalachicola, City of Port St. Joe? I don't know, but I think there's probably some commonalities there that we could look at. Maybe we look at those that have been through a hurricane. Do they change their regulations after that? I think we also need to agree on what a tree is. Sometimes I've seen oleanders that are not what's in the LDC that has a minimum 2-inch singular trunk. So that's really, that has a well-defined stem. As we look at the tree issue, I think we, as leaders, should be looking at, we're responsible for the way Mexico Beach looks years from now. And what should the landscape policy be to get it to an aesthetic that people count on us to take care of.
So before you run away, I'm trying to keep it simple for me. So essentially you're saying we need to look at the code from the perspective of resource replacement rather than protection, so increasing the number of trees on the greenery. And then something I thought we'd never have to do is actually define what a tree is. Michael, those kind of the overall summary?
There's a definition.
Yeah, we have it.
Okay.
It's a little vague.
Change the definition, you're saying?
I think,
Well, the planning requirement says a ratio of one tree for every 50 linear feet of boundary is required. Trees shall have a minimum overall height of 10 to 12 feet at time of planting. Which is minimum, 10 or 12? You can have one number as a minimum.
Okay.
And you should define whether it's from the ground up, because we talked about this the other night, or from the root ball up. The root's are the important thing of the tree, isn't it?
So trees are usually measured at 54 inches DBH, which is the breast height, typical breast height. So it's usually measured in circumference at DBH
Right.
and not caliper inches or
But
height.
we're talking height in our code right now, isn't it?
It is.
10 to 12
well,
feet.
the circumference at DBH should be an indication of the height of the tree, because the bigger the size at DBH, assumedly the taller the tree is going to be, because it's a more mature tree.
This is,
The height just seemed like put a
the
tape.
tree issue is something I think most of us on planning and zoning, and probably most of the other comments Chris has gotten, it's a sensitive issue. And we're all sensitive to the fact, and the point I made, and I was talking to Julie about it the other day, I don't want to hear an excuse from a homeowner or a developer that it's winter and you can't get a 10-foot tree. Panhandle Palms is right over there. Lisenby's is over in Panama City Beach. You can get 20-foot palms if you want them. All it costs is money. And I've watched it over and over and over the last 4 or 5 years. People come in here and they put in 36-inch high citrus trees that are gonna die the first time we have 35-degree weather. And then they get a CO, they go on down the road. And I don't necessarily think it's fair the way we currently got the pressure on Greg's department. And then Tommy has to go out and define, well, have they controlled their stormwater so it's not running on Rich or on Chris? And then, well, are the trees tall enough? And then our code enforcement, she has no authority to enforce people keeping their trees alive. So it's a broad issue, but it should be resource replenishment should be part of that.
yeah, and I think, I just wanted to comment on that, I shouldn't, but we do have maintenance in the LDR.
But who's enforcing?
I know, but, and it's on my list, but when we get to it, maybe
So
transferring that stuff
Sorry to speak out of school.
to a cleaner page and let people, when they get their permits.
But those of us that saw 2018 and have witnessed what's happened since,
And if I can jump in on this, this is definitely a huge issue. I think what I'm worried about is if we try to tackle everything. So we have the height of the tree, the size of the tree, the number of trees per square feet. Then we have to add to that, how are we going to enforce it? What kind of trees? Is it code? Is it building? Is everything else? That is such a huge issue that we can't attack it. Let's focus on what is it we want to see there? And then we'll worry about enforcement after that. So if the answer is not is it 10 or 12 feet, but it is a 12-foot tree that is 3 feet in circumference, whatever it is, let's get that or suggest that to the council to get that in the code. And then once we have these baseline or these requirements set, then we can focus on who's going to enforce and how that's going to work and all that good stuff. So I don't want to cut you off. I just don't want to get lost in the big picture. So
To me, it's a real simple issue. We define it, whatever that height is, 10 or 12 feet, and that's the mandate. And then if Greg wants his CO, he puts the required number of trees. And personally, I think 6 or 8 trees on a quarter-acre lot, if you put the right size trees in, you gotta have room for the trees to mature. So I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, and I'm going back a little bit into my landscaping days, but
It's
So
an
if I-
enforcement issue and always has
if
been.
let me jump in before we go deep into the issues. The purpose of tonight, I want to make sure we focus on what the requirements are, what the changes should be. Enforcement is a whole other issue, and that's something that we definitely need to take a look at, and we definitely will be taking a look at it. But for the purposes of the meeting tonight, I want to make sure we get the council your opinions on what needs to change or what they have to focus on with the LDCs, and then I promise you, we're going to dig into enforcement because that's a huge issue across the board here.
And that's fine, but the requirements are in the LDC and have been in the LDC. It is a simple issue. You have to have X number of trees for X number of linear feet. They have to be X number of size. End of discussion. You don't get your CO unless you fulfill those requirements.
Right. And that's getting
it.
into enforcement, and that's not the purpose of tonight's meeting. That's definitely a whole another can of worms that we're gonna open. But I wanna make sure we focus on, baby steps, let's take these requirements and make sure we have the right requirements in there, and then we can worry on enforcement. So, I have here too, anybody else from the public want to speak? Any other suggestions or comments? I scared you all, didn't I? No, okay.
I'd just say on the, you know, and I totally understand what you're saying, Chris, as far as the enforcement on it. But if there are rules and we're not living by those, why add more?
Yep.
You know, let's dig into if there has to be 6 trees, they need 6 trees, they don't get a CO, period. And I think the latter part on that I caught.
We need to double check the CO thing with the attorney. I'm concerned, there is legislation, and this is just an example, I don't know if this applies to what the city can do, can't do, whatever, but I can't hold a permit up while you wait for DEP. I can't hold a permit up while you wait on another agency. I'm breaking the law if I do that. And we do it. I do hold COs for leverage occasionally. I don't have to do a lot, but we need to make sure that's legal. I worry that.
I can speak to that.
Okay,
We
thanks.
we cannot hold a development order up
Right.
based on state
Okay.
agency permits. We can hold a CO up.
Okay, just as
Yes.
long as we're clear. Okay.
Yes.
I just had a concern about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Now,
think-
whether or not you can hold a CO based on a tree being planted, I don't know about that, because
Yeah,
you're
so-
looking at the structure
Right.
and not the whole site.
That's, yeah.
And I think the other side that Jack brought up that maybe we're missing a link on is, if we made this rule, it doesn't mean it goes away after a year or 2 years. The rule is maintained. That means that if you walk up there and there's 6 trees on January 2024, and January 25, you go there and there's only 2, they need to put 4 more in.
And
I
those
think we need to monitor the
regulations-
rules.
To Lisa's point, that exists now. It says if a plant is dead or severely damaged or diseased within 1 year of planting, the plant shall be replaced by the
Exactly.
developer.
So we should do it.
It's in there.
I agree, I'm saying,
But that's a
take the
developer.
rules and start to apply them.
Well, what about adding to it, like we had our hurricane, okay? I replaced every tree on my property, and I lost every one of them. I replaced them all. Maybe we should add into the code, if you have a natural disaster, the homeowner is responsible to replace the trees within 6 months, whatever. but put that in there. Because you got houses now that don't have any damn trees. They just never replanted again. And half the people won't care because they don't live here.
There might be one word in your semantics that I think that Laura just caught. So this says that it must be replaced by the developer, well, also by the homeowner, correct? So
But we definitely need to change this. So once the CO's issued, the developer's out of the picture.
Did you catch
Do
that,
you-
Chris?
Yeah, do you have that handy? Can you have the chapter?
Yep, it is a whole tree chapter.
Yeah, it's under 4.01,
Yeah.
4.0106, that would be F.
So remove
Yeah.
developer,
Two.
and so remove or change developer to property owner, or whatever that works out to be. Is that
Yeah,
Okay.
Laura can pick the phrase, but yeah.
I wanna just, Chris, are you pretty well complete there? You got everything you need from the public?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm starting the list of enforcement issues that we need to address.
Okay, I just wanna jump in a little bit and let the council have some input. And I can only tell you that this input from these citizens is exactly what we need. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the way that we could all take care of things that are already in and add additional. So we need to just take some time and write them up properly,
Yep.
put them back out on the website, and then come up with a question with a solution, which is a rewrite. How about council? Tim, you got anything?
Well, for many years, I've been the advocate of protecting the wetlands as much as possible. And I've done some research on this, and I don't think it's as easy as what you're saying, Maureen, in the comp plan. But I'm willing, if it is, I'd be happy to go with that. Talking with the state, my impression was the only way we could add the mitigation to our area would be to establish a mitigation bank in Mexico Beach or in the wetlands that affect us. And so I'm all for looking into that, getting Laura and whoever else to take a look at that. The other thing I would like to look at, and I've always thought we should do this, and it's going to be a challenge with property owners' rights versus what we can do. Can we say that sensitive lands, per the comp plan, maybe the land development code, the council can designate sensitive lands,
We do,
but can we do that to private property?
we do, yeah.
Okay.
We do a list wetlands as environmentally sensitive.
So that's something I would be very much in favor of, because I know we're living in Florida, everything's a wetland, but it has an impact, even if it's a minor wetland, on flooding and when it rains, where the water goes. And so that's something that
But
I
if
agree.
you can remember that subdivision on the curve on 15th Street, which had a wetland in it, they went to DEP and got the fill permits. We have no control over that.
But that's what I'd like to challenge, like Lorraine has mentioned, is do we have the authority, do we have the ability within the city to designate areas, now it's too late for that one, but to designate areas that are obviously or wetlands. And here's the thing.
We do, but the problem is, outside of what we're doing, they can go to the state and get their wetland fill permit, and we have no say in that.
Yeah, well, that's what I think we need to try and challenge or do something about. And I don't know if it's possible. I've been told it's not, that we have no say in it. But if something was designated a sensitive land, and I understand a wetland is not a wetland until the state agency says it's a wetland. And so there's some complexities to this, but I think it's something we should delve into. The other thing about the trees, I think I've been pretty adamant that I think we need more trees. We have limited public space that we should put trees on. But I'd like to see could we make people put trees back on lots since the hurricane.
It's in here,
So is that something we could do? And I know it's gonna be distasteful, but we need for the stormwater issues we have, trees are one of the best solutions that we could get for that high volume of rain to absorb it. So I would be in favor of looking at whatever we can do to get more trees in the city soon.
I would recommend that you reach out to Panama City and Lynn Haven, who have done an outstanding job at tree giveaways. And those trees go just like that, and people will come and get them and plant them in their yard. It was a way as an incentive, so people aren't going out and spending the money on the trees. They're actually being given to them to go plant those trees in their yard.
Yeah. And then trees for new building, new COs. I didn't realize it was 12 feet, because I see a lot of trees. I think I see a lot of trees that aren't 12 feet that go to that number, but I could be wrong.
So here's the deal on that, and I'm just, this is as straight up, this is as straight as it gets. So if a homeowner, and was it you, sir? Is that right?
Yeah.
Behind you. Was, were you, sir? Was it you that had a tree issue and came to see us? Am I wrong?
Possibly. Yeah,
Okay.
finish the story.
So if a homeowner comes in our office and says, hey, look, my wife doesn't want a palm tree, and I agree with you about that. She wants this tree, and I can't get it until whenever. 3 months, 4 months. But you got my CO. If we can have a cordial conversation and that gentleman's proactive or lady, whoever's proactive and they're, you know, I want to work with you, but can you work with me? Then usually I go that way. I give them the benefit of the doubt. I've not been steered wrong like this gentleman here. I helped him, he planted his trees and all. Now, of course, I'm sure that somebody will say, well, you just didn't know that you, whatever. But I try to work with every citizen here that I can to get, you know, and somebody's house is a big deal. I look at that as a big deal, their CEO. So even if it's just a vacation home, it's a lot of money, it's bigger. So yes, we have made concessions where, well, Greg, this tree is only 8.5 foot tall. It's the only one they got. This is, okay, well, it'll be 10 foot. If you'll do that, we have made, I have made some concessions in that area to facilitate jobs moving forward and getting them finished. That's not done often,
Yeah.
but it has been done.
I don't know, Greg. I don't have any data. It was just kind of a gut feeling sometimes when I see trees planted.
Sure.
I want to address e-bikes, because I ride an e-bike. I understand the concern of e-bikes on sidewalks versus pedestrians with dogs on long leashes. And I would ultimately like to see a bike lane on 98. I think that would solve so many of these problems of bikes, because that's where most of the problems I think have with e-bikes are on the sidewalks on 98. But if you look at 98, I don't think it's really safe. But it's not. I'm not saying we shouldn't take a look at this and figure out a plan, because most of it comes down to, I think, people being courteous and responsible. Not everybody can seem to do that, so we're going to have to make rules to protect people for safety reasons. So that's something that I believe should be looked at, definitely. We probably talked enough.
Jason?
No, when this all started, we're gonna have to, the citizens have offered a lot of comments, we've offered a lot. So when we started looking at this LDC, the big thing is, are we gonna go through it in detail? Or are we going to approach it like this? And that's gonna come up real soon. And I'm hearing all these comments and these things, and I'm still not so sure that we don't need to go through this thing. Hate to say it, page by page.
No, we don't need to cherry pick it.
And move stuff around to category. It's all kind of different things that need to be, you know, just simplicity. We've heard those items. So, you know, that's one of my comments. I mean, are we gonna address what has just been put in the list, or are we gonna go through the whole book?
Our intent was to remember the schedule we have, okay?
Yeah.
So we're gonna meet again on the 18th of January, I think, and that'll be the last citizens. So after that, we'll do the same thing we did here, and we'll decide whether we wanna go with a charter committee, or if we wanna set up a committee, or whatever we wanna do from there.
Okay, well, that's the main thing. Another is, the wetlands has come up a lot, and it is a big deal. The only time I've ever somewhat dealt with it was Gulf County, and I know we're kind of limited, you know, because the state you can go to the state and you can get it delineated, and there's banks, or there's different ways to do it, there's restoring places, but I know Gulf County had, the density on the wetlands was a thing where they, you know, they just allowed you to have like 20% of that. Now, I didn't go any further. I don't know for sure if you fill it, do you get that? But I took it as no matter what you did with that, that density was all you were credited for. So let's just say you were at whatever, 4 per acre, you're only gonna get 20% of that. If you're that part of your wetland, if you have wetlands on the property. So I don't know, that's just a thought. You're talking about the wetlands, maybe something we could do. Yeah, and there's so much to it. The trees are a big deal. I would say, as everybody talk about trees, I would say us as a city government, maybe we should start looking at on our own property, on city stuff, and promoting, you know. Great start.
Set the example.
Set examples, you know, and we'll get to that in the book. I do feel like it's on my list that the whole tree thing needs to be moved. It needs to, the public needs to be educated on really what it says. Because like you said, we've seen trees out there planted that look like twigs and, you know, things like that. I think better, but we'll get to all that.
The litigation thing, I've been through that before. That's with the DEP. I'm telling you, I know what Ms. Nancy said, but when I dealt with them, it was one way. And I'll give you a good example. They come through my farm, the 4-lane highway went through my pond. And I said, how in the hell you going through my pond in wetlands? And they did. So that litigation and that bank, and people can do it, and they do it here. They really bypass us. I know what she said. I'll check into it. But they don't really have to deal with Mexico piece. They go to the state and get that.
May I pose a question? So what Jason, what you're talking about, and what Lisa brought up, which I agree with, by the way, if you got 10 acres and 3 of it is wetland, then obviously it's logical to say, well, you're not going to count that in your density because you can't build on it. Would that effectively, if we had that verbiage in there, we could do that, would that impact if I can only build on the 7 acres to start with, why would I feel the way?
So what you're talking about is the difference between the calculation of net density and gross density.
Okay.
And most local governments count the gross density when they're looking at a parcel. Some local governments, like Walton County, have this complicated formula that if you're going to fill a wetland, you get this credit, and you end up trying to figure out. And then some local governments, if you have gross density, you're just moving that density into the upland portion, not necessarily filling. I like your kind of concept that maybe there's some sort of formula that if you have a wetland, then your density is reduced, and maybe that takes away some of the incentive to filling in the wetland. I don't know if it would or not, but
That's what I was asking, yeah. And I don't know.
but I do know that Walton County's formula is pretty effective at helping preserve wetlands because it is not a simple one-for-one mitigation.
And if we had the gross density
credit
instead of the net?
The net density would be taking out the wetlands.
Okay, so if we did the net density, and they got a DEP permit to fill it in.
Which we have no control over.
Right,
Then
so
you
does
would-
that revert the density back to the whole 10 acres, would that revert
Yes.
back?
You see, and that's where Walton County has kind of made it a little
Harder?
to, and doesn't incentivize doing that.
Okay.
I got one more thing, the tree thing needs to be read, I like the idea of letting the city set an example, and I think put it out on, I think that would be good. Miss Hamilton's good at the flower and garden, she can help us.
So just real quick, could we have looked at trees? We have done grant requests, and I was one who recommended holding up this year. We need to figure out where we want the trees, what kind, that sort of thing. It shouldn't be up to me to make that decision or January. So that's something I could see a tree committee figuring out, taking a look at the public spaces and figuring out what our plan is for them and coming up with the trees. There are plenty of grants out there we can apply for reforestation.
Getting the tree and planting the tree and the tree living after you plant it is a critical thing being in Florida. For it to live. Now after you water it and get it to go, most time it takes roots and grow, but when you plant it, that does not mean it's gonna live here.
No, that's all part of the plan for the tree. There's a maintenance program,
Right.
they even provide irrigation as part of the grant in many cases, so.
Even how you plant it makes a difference.
Yep.
Well, going back to the tree, we are considered a tree city, and we have had a couple, at least, 2, Julie, Arbor Day events where we have done massive tree giveaways.
3 now.
3 now?
Since
Okay.
I've been here.
Okay, so, I mean, that has helped. They may not have been 10 feet tall trees, 3 feet wide, but they were a beginning, and a lot of people took advantage of that free resource. So that's one thing we've done. Everything else I have pretty much, you've already received through emails.
Yep.
Chris, gone over that. Some citizens are concerned about the food trucks and had several suggestions on that.
Yes, I've gotten a few of those.
And you've
from-
gotten those,
yeah.
and then you received all the information that I was concerned about.
Go ahead, John.
What Linda mentioned about the trees and the Arbor Day, I guess a caution would be the wording, if we're gonna change the wording on trees, is like the trees we give away at Arbor Day do not meet the code in some cases, so we're talking the 10 to 12 feet being to meet your minimum to get your CO, but then the Arbor Day doesn't have to follow those same height and girth restrictions. Because some of those trees are small and spindly and they will eventually grow, but I guess to cover ourselves and make sure we're in our wording that we don't, so every tree you put has got to be 12 feet tall.
I don't advise that. It's hard when they get that tall and they're in a small pot. The likelihood for them to succeed and grow is bigger when they're small and you plant them small, unfortunately. When they become root bound, it's hard to plant them properly to get them to continue to grow and not girdle themselves as they grow tall.
And our trees that we give away for Arbor Day, those are ones that the city purchases. I mean, if you're looking at going out, the city does not have the money to give every person in New Mexico Beach a $500 tree. So
Right.
that's also another.
I'm just making sure the wording is that the trees you give don't have to
Right.
be that.
Right.
Why?
Based on the type of development that we have, I don't think people are short for the money to add a few more trees. When you see elevated pools and boat lifts, and he knows what he expects.
You are correct, sir.
Well, the trees are not that expensive.
Hey, look, I think we could.
I had one other thing. This is something I've thought about for a while. And what if we took a look at Highway 98, the corridor, and had, if I'm saying the word correctly, facade rules, so that we had a building code that it had to look like, and you have to define this, old Florida. So buildings that, I'll give you an example, McDonald's, cities that do this. McDonald's doesn't look like the Golden Arches. It looks more like a beachy building. And so we couldn't do anything about the current buildings, but in the future, commercial buildings going on Highway 98 would have to meet the, whatever we decide we want that look to be. And it's something I've thought about, and I think that's worth looking at maybe in the comp plan down the road. I don't know if it's an LDC issue, but it's something I think if we want to all these things kind of bring back, keep Mexico Beach what we remember, or the feel, the look of it.
Isn't it already in the comp plan?
No,
It's not, they have a beachy look. I thought it was.
That's open to interpretation, right?
Yeah, because that's why that t-shirt shop, there was an argument on P and Z about
Beachy
that.
does a lot of
We got a beachy look ordinance.
I don't know what it's called.
I like it.
Y'all gonna make me look it up, that's what you're doing. I know it's in there.
It's in the forefront before the future land use element.
There's other
See, thank you, Laura.
I think as long,
I didn't dream it.
as long as the beachy look ordinance includes a line in there that the facade of every building has to have merman Tim with his merman tail on the front of the building.
I will let you know that the Florida law requires you, if you're going to have aesthetic control, to have a board that reviews those applications.
It's P and Z, right?
There's probably other cities that have this definition, maybe not a similar definition, like up beachy, but there's other cities that have a distinct and defined code. Using the McDonald's example, I can think of two cities in particular that don't allow the Golden Arches, Sedona, Arizona. They're not beachy, but they've got their own style. And then same with Santa Fe. Santa Fe doesn't have one either.
You can't be exclusionary in Florida. You can't prohibit a certain type of business in Florida.
We're not excluding.
It wasn't excluded, it was made it look.
It's
Like-
literally the color of the Golden
I thought you
Arches.
said they didn't allow them. So now in South Walton, they've just built a McDonald's that's a white building, and that looks coastal.
If I could jump into this topic, this is something that I did with my previous employer. They had regulations down to shingle type. It was basically an HOA. Shingle type, paint colors, all those sorts of requirements. And in theory, we could set up that Highway 98 corridor zone and require all buildings to be from these three colors or whatever
But
materials.
keep in mind, this might stifle commercial buildings, so I think we gotta look at this holistically.
And you also need to remember, I understand what you're saying, but you need to remember that there's a fine line we have to walk between having an HOA type with a color palette, and you can only do this and that, and the freewheeling atmosphere that was and still is Mexico Beach, where the thing that makes it unique is that nothing matches, but it all somehow works together. We can't stifle a lot of things. We can say certain things have to be met. For instance, we had toucans and all of its wacky, funky glory sitting there on the beach. We have the ship store marina in its glory. You have Forgotten Coast Brewery, the way it looks. You have the Driftwood, the way it used to look and looks now. None of those would meet rigid standards, but they all have the same spirit, and that's what we attempted to put in the forefront of the comprehensive plan, but we didn't describe how we got there or how to make it happen, and that's what we need to do. So we have to walk that fine line between rigid St. Joe HOA style stuff, which is not what most of us moved to Mexico Beach for, and the freewheeling stuff. So it can be defined, but you gotta be careful.
Chris, I did find it.
What'd you get?
Okay, under purpose and intent, the city's intent, number 2A, maintain the traditional town development pattern and historical appearance of its coastal architect.
Okay.
You're in this comp plan?
Yes.
Comprehensive plan, yes, sir. It's under purpose and intent of the comprehensive plan.
All right.
But I just want to say one thing. I am not advocating strict HOA standards. I am just trying to get more to
Inspiration.
a nice appearance versus some of the crazy commercial buildings that could happen.
Well, the new Cape and Coast building, it's a stark white building, but there's not a stem of landscaping around. So what does that add to the corridor?
I can throw my facilitator hat back on, and so we've added quite a few things to the list. There are bigger concerns that we'll be addressing. Among those are enforcement of trees prior to COs, enforcement of trees post-construction, perhaps looking at the comprehensive plan for the beachy feel, and then we have some bigger issues to look at wetlands. But as far as tonight's purposes, I think I have a ton of info. I can get all this put together and then put out on, like I said, the website. It'll be in the administrator update section of the first drop-down menu. That way everyone can review what we have so far prior to the next meeting in January. And then the process is after that point, the council will decide what the dance is going to be after that, whether we attack some of these individual issues or do a more comprehensive. So before I hand it back over to Mr. Mayor, if I could just say thank you so much for coming. These are really hot button issues. This is defining what Mexico Beach wants to be, what Mexico Beach is going to look at. There's definitely lots of challenges out there. And I apologize if I came across as way too anal retentive or shutting you down. I just want to make sure that for the small bite that we're able to take at this point, I want to get as much accomplished as we possibly can. If you have additional things, and for anyone watching online, if you have additional things, please shoot them to me via email, c.truitt@mexicobeachfl.gov, and we'll get those added to the list. I'm hoping, there's a lot to go through. I'm hoping to get this online by Wednesday.
So, Chris, can I ask one clarifying question before
Yes.
you throw it back? As an interested downstream customer of the information you're about to publish,
Yes.
do you have a plan for how you submit sort of the new information that are, or at least new placeholders or notes that are going into the updated LDC different than what it looks like now? Where I'm going with this is, when I review a document that's being revised, it's really, it's very helpful for me to see like a change log or to see new font or, something that shows in some sort of clear fashion what's new and what's old, whether it's a different size font. Have you thought through that, or how you're going to present sort of this new information to the public so that we can sift through it rather quickly?
I wasn't planning on releasing any of this for that reason. No, this is at this point, this is just topics of things we want to touch on or topics we want to present to the city council. Once we get to the point where the council decides what they want to do, that's when we'll have that strike through in there so we can see what it is and what we're looking at changing.
Yeah, and I think one of the things obviously Chris is gonna do, he's not gonna try to eliminate anybody's thoughts, but he's definitely gonna see duplications and things like that. And he's gonna take judgment on that, and he's gonna turn 6 into 3. So I think you'll see some massaging there, and that'll go on. All the council will take a look at everything that he's putting out, because we're there every other day or every day. And I've asked all the council people to make sure that they know exactly what Chris is putting out and approving it. So that's the way we operate. I mean, that's the way it's gonna be. So when we come back on the 18th, grab your friends, neighbors, whatever, if they have additional things, let's get it all put together. Lisa was gonna start her speech, and I might be guessing, but I'm probably not. She was gonna be pro, let's do a charter. And I'm not against that, Lisa. I mean, I'm okay with that, and I think the council is too. If we need that, we're gonna get there. But if we don't need that, and Laura can make the changes based on all of our input, we'll do that too. We're gonna do whatever's smart for the city. Tim, did you have something else to?
You said the 18th, that's a Saturday.
No,
Uh,
it's the 8th.
8th? Oh, I'm sorry.
It's the 8th.
I'm sorry.
The 8th is a Wednesday, right?
Next check,
It is.
right?
The 8th is a Wednesday.
And I think it's a 9 o'clock.
Yeah, that's the morning.
I think so.
Yeah, I looked based on your availability as scheduled, please.
Lauren, did you have anything you want to add?
No, this is all great input. It's really helpful to hear it.
Agreed. Just before we adjourn, I have one other thing, as soon as you guys are done with what you have.
Okay, good.
Okay. On a personal note, I am asking for your thoughts and prayers to my family back up in Wisconsin. My son's high school was the one that was shot up this morning. There is one teacher passed away, 2 students passed away. One of them was the shooter. So it's a small Christian school, 200 kids. They're reeling right now. So here we are a week before Christmas, and they're dealing with this. So if you do pray at night, I ask that you just pray for the family at Abundant Life Christian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. I have all of your stuff. Yeah, it's just another input session.
You're right here.
Are you right-handed?
Yes.
Okay, we can pass those up. Oh, I missed it.
Yeah, I'll have Ms. Logan.